Hello, welcome back. My name is Megan, and I am on the marketing team here at Bill. Just to give you a little bit of a short intro to Bill, we are a leader in financial automation software for small and mid-sized businesses. Bill combines both APAR, spend and expense, and insights and forecasting to give you a fintech tool that is perfect for your needs. On to welcoming today's panel. I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to my colleague, John.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Megan. I appreciate that. Hello, everyone. I'm John Isom, and I'm a product marketing manager here at Bill. I'm privileged to be part of the team that helps to bring the integrated experiences of our financial operations platform to market so we can serve as the champions for all of our amazing customers. It is such a pleasure for me to be here today, and I am so excited for this conversation. So as you can see, we are joined by two very distinguished experts on our panel today, and I want to give them both the chance to introduce themselves as well. So Rich, can we please start with you?
Sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Rich Insenius. So I'm a consultant over here at Baker Tilly. Baker Tilly offers a plethora of different financial services as we're a financial services firm. So whether that's tax advisory, assurance, any sort of legal services, and specifically the team I work for is our DigFast team. That's going to be anything that involves digital solutions across the board. The product that I personally work with on a daily basis is going to be Sage Intacct, which I have found to be just an incredible accounting platform to work with there, very user-friendly. I've worked a lot with nonprofits specifically, but do get into the commercial area from time to time to help out there as we really just try to know everything as essentially as much as we can about the product. I can say that personally, my background is in audit. I did a lot of that, which allows me to really help our accounting, any of our accounting folks that come over from another accounting platform into Sage Intacct, and we're able to get them set up, configured, good to go. We also connect them with marketplace partners or set them up with any sort of whether that's a third party or even proprietary software that's going to help them really just get to their financial goals and needs as far as accounting goes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Rich. And we are so excited to have you with us. Thomas, can you please introduce yourself as well?
Yep. Hello, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here today and to dive into this important discussion with all of you. My name is Thomas Neal. I'm the controller at Celigo, who actually is a Baker Tilly client, by the way. My career has centered around driving integration, automation, and transformation initiatives across various business functions. And after leading countless transformation projects, I just kind of had a realization. Why not go join the company that's really setting the standard for integrations? And that's what brought me here to Celigo, what I consider to be the best-in-class integration platform. Put simply, if your goal is to seamlessly connect and optimize every system across your tech stack, Celigo is the partner you want by your side.
I love it. Thank you very much, Thomas. And thank you both again so much for being here with us today. We are really lucky to have a wealth of expertise and experience on the panel between the two of you. And I'm personally so excited to learn from each of you. And I know everyone on the call is as well. So let's move on to the next slide, please.
All right, we're actually going to roll in and launch our first poll question. So let me get that open and on the screen for you guys today. Poll question number 1, what are your primary goals for implementing a finance tech stack? Please select all that apply. That's obviously what brought us here today. We wanted to learn more about building your tech stack. So let us know kind of what some of those goals are. Is it to improve financial accuracy and reporting, streamline financial processes and reduce manual work, comply with financial regulations, or we have other goals? And if you're selecting we have other goals, head to that Q&A panel for me. Let us know what those are. We would love to know what your goals are as you're building your fintech stack so that we can address some of those questions and issues today. So let us know, what are your goals as it comes to implementing your tech stack? I'm going to leave that open for, 5 or 10 more seconds. So go ahead, jump on. As a reminder, you do need to answer 3 of the 4 poll questions. You should be able to just click on the screen. If you're not seeing the option there, head to the poll tab and click one of the bubble options that are available. I will leave that open on the poll tab for a little bit longer for those of you who are maybe having a hard time, but I'm going to stop sharing on the screen so that we can continue with our presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Megan. So today we're talking about building a financial tech stack and some of the pro tips for the change management involved. So let's start from the top. Begin by defining what exactly a fintech stack is. So a finance technology stack, or a fintech stack, is a set of tools that'll streamline financial and accounting processes, connecting them back to a company's operations. So what are the benefits of using fintech tools? Well, there are many. Fintech tools can really help you streamline your processes. They can help improve efficiency, help you automate tasks, provide real-time insights, improve data accuracy, and ultimately help strengthen your financial control. A finance tech stack is important for businesses of really any size because they can help streamline your financial operations and enable the real-time data analysis so that businesses can make more informed decisions, optimize cash flow, and ultimately help to drive growth. So now let's go through the steps for putting together a finance tech stack. So to start, you'll need to evaluate the unique fintech needs of your business. And this begins with identifying your own manual financial processes. And this is where I'd love to start looping in some of our experts to dig into the nitty-gritty of how we can go about accomplishing this. So Rich, I'd love to maybe start with you here. How can businesses effectively map out their existing processes, their existing financial processes, to identify some of those areas of inefficiency and maybe areas that are good potential for automation?
So the steps that I like to take are going to be, let's just have a discussion, right? Let's talk about where you're coming from. Let's maybe look at some of your financial reporting, for example, because a lot of folks are moving over to Sage Intacct specifically for their financial reporting. That is a huge selling point there. And I just want to know about your automation. A lot of people find the pain points to being either, I can't see my data the way I want it to, I can't format it, I can't present it the way I want it to. What's the best way I can go about doing that? Then we go from there to talk about, okay, what's the best way we can kind of design your system, configure everything, lay everything out so that you really are getting the best out of your data and you're able to see that in real time. Outside of that, it's usually we are doing a lot of manual entries, it's taking a lot of time, our closing process takes forever. Is there any way that we can essentially automate this a little bit better? Let's talk about that. So what are we doing manually? Are we entering a bunch of JEs manually? Do you have the option for any sort of recurring transactions? Do you have the option for imports? And what other sort of third-party systems are you using? There's a lot of opportunity in a bunch of different facets that are going to make your financial closing periods a lot faster. And that's really where we start there, is just talking about where are you coming from, what are the needs, what are the pain points specifically there, and let's talk about how we can essentially configure this new system to make all that faster and just cut down that time. Let's just try to get as close to cutting that time in half.
I love that. And as a follow-on to that, Rich, what are maybe some of the common manual financial processes that a business might overlook when they're considering automation? Some of the things that maybe people don't always think about, things that businesses may overlook that you've seen in your experience.
So interestingly enough, what I tend to find is that depending on what system you're coming from, a lot of people are still doing manual closing processes in terms of closing to equity or net assets, depending on the type of accounting that you're doing. So again, with the product that we service, there is no manual closing. I know that's one that people tend to look at. Another one specifically is, again, a lot of those closing entries, whether it's you're going through the reconciliation process, whether it's depreciation, whether it's amortization, anything that's going to be really that reoccurring transaction on a monthly basis to be able to tie everything out, to reconcile, to go through that balance sheet, make sure everything really ticks and ties, right? We want to make sure that we can make that process just as quick as possible. So in terms of, again, business processes that people overlook, is a lot of people also just don't know what can be automated. Especially if you're coming from an older software or a software that has little to no automation, or maybe just doesn't have that connectability to sync data from a third party. Let's just say if you have credit cards, which I know is a pain point for seemingly everybody that comes over, getting those expenses in timely, especially, and then going through that reconciliation process, depending on who your credit card servicer is, if you have a third party, or even if you don't have a third party, we could recommend one to say, hey, you could get these in seamlessly with the click of a button or just automatic. And that was something maybe these individuals just didn't know about at all. So what we try to do, especially when it comes to the automation, is look, here's what we have, here's what the platform has. Again, Sage Intacct is what we use. So here's what the platform has natively as far as what automation processes or potential that we have just right out of the box. And then from there, again, going back to those pain points from the first discussion, you mentioned you had in this example credit cards. And so what are you using there? Could we possibly interest you in one of our marketplace partners that's going to be able to seamlessly sync all that data in for you? So really the big takeaway there is just, again, understanding those pain points and then offering the automation and really just opening up that door to automation to let you know what the potential possibilities are when a lot of folks just don't really know what's out there.
That makes sense. Yeah, and that's super insightful. Thank you, Rich. I think after identifying your manual financial processes, the next step, kind of as you've already alluded to, is to really pinpoint kind of some of those specific pain areas and some of the areas for improvement. And you've already touched on some of those common pain points around some of the manual reconciliation, long close processes, and other areas that can be automated. So I'd love to kind of continue this thread with you, Rich. When you've kind of scoped out these manual processes and identified these pain points, what are some criteria that businesses could consider using to prioritize their fintech needs? And how can they really balance the need for sort of those immediate solutions with maybe longer term strategic goals? What are some ways that businesses can think about that?
So what I'm always looking for, especially when it comes to those pain points, I think one of the things that we first identify is, okay, how, let's going back to the prioritization, if you will, is what is on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, what is the biggest pain point? All right, let's figure that out first, right? Because again, as we go through design, as we're having these discussions, if you're going to tell me that really it's our month-end closing process, all right, let's focus on that. What about the month-end closing process, right? Is it those reoccurring transactions? Is it that you have 1,200 assets that you're depreciating on a monthly basis and you want to find out how can I possibly just get that to work on its own? I don't want to think about depreciation. I wanted to generate a depreciation schedule for me, or with prepaids, generate a prepaid amortization schedule for me, and just be able to populate all those on a monthly basis for me. So that particular concern is more of a volume-based concern, right? But then you have on the other side, whether it's volume, on the other side of that is how often, right? So if it's not volume, then it's how often are we having these issues that could be automated, that's just taking forever. Everybody on, in this case, the accounting team is working till 8 p.m. every night. We just can't seem to get this done. We're highly inefficient. What can we do there? And so that's more of a daily issue. So then, okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what is causing you to be, put in 10, 12 hours a day because due to inefficiency. So whenever it comes to that, then that discussion changes completely because it could be both, right? It could be a volume issue, but if it's a daily issue, then it could be a situation where maybe we have a lot of credit card transactions, again, going back to that, just because that is a major pain point for a lot of folks, whether it's the credit cards or maybe it's just the volume of AP as well. So again, it could be both there. So if it were on the AP side, maybe we're trying to get, too many bills in or not enough bills. Maybe there's opportunity there for a marketplace partner like a Bill, right, to be able to pull those and just to sync those transactions in for us, and then we can focus our energy in other places, and then that's going to allow, again, in this example, the accounting team to be able to come together and say, okay, well now guess what, we're all able to go home and have dinner with our families now, right? And that's the goal. I think for us specifically is the value added is we try to make sure that everything is done as efficiently and as effectively as possible to save that time and really allow people to just get some of those more, not necessarily shift those pain points, but to really just have the pain go away there.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. I think that gives us a really good framework for trying to balance some of those kind of urgent needs with really looking into those longer term recurring issues. So really appreciate your insights there. So the third component, after you've kind of identified those pain points and those opportunities, is you then really want to prioritize those needs based on your business goals. And so Thomas, I'd love to turn this one to you. How can businesses prioritize their automation needs in a way that aligns with their specific business goals? And kind of as a follow-on to that, what metrics or KPIs could they use to measure the impact of that?
Yeah, so I think the key to a successful automation strategy is having a structured approach that ensures your automations deliver the maximum value, right? And that really starts by making sure you're clearly defining your business goals. And every business and even departments within a business are going to have different priorities, and many times those priorities are going to be competing. But for example, some key business goals that you're trying to think about when you think about transformation or automation projects, you might focus on cost reductions, while others might be more concerned with improving customer experience or increasing efficiency, scaling operations, or of course, meeting compliance requirements, right? Any of these could be a good goal for a program. And once those goals are clear, it's important to define how you're going to measure that success. Like, what metrics will you use, right? And so good examples there, like sometimes it's ROI. ROI can be a little bit tricky because once again, usually meeting compliance requirements, for example, doesn't have an immediate ROI. The other ones could be error reduction, or they could be time savings, right? Actually saving the team time, as Rich kind of spoke about earlier. So then these metrics can kind of serve as your guidepost as you're trying to, decide and prioritize what automation, how you're going to prioritize your automations. And as Rich spoke to earlier, you need to take a really good look at your current workflows and identify those repetitive, time-consuming, error-prone tasks, and then focus on the areas that are going to have the most direct impact on your revenue, on your cost savings, or once again, customer satisfaction. And one thing I really like to highlight here is when you're looking at those workflows, if the processes that you're evaluating don't already have key performance indicators, during this evaluation is a key time to go ahead and develop those key performance indicators or KPIs. You definitely always want to have a baseline of, hey, here's where I started, and here's where I'm going, and here's where I ended up, right? You want to be able to kind of track that journey. And at this point, you're going to have a list of your workflows that could be automated, but then prioritizing them is going to be, a little bit challenging, and everyone has different approaches to this. Personally, I rank projects on several criteria. First to me is just feasibility, right? Can it be done with the technology I currently have? Do I have the expertise within house to be able to do this kind of implementation or project? Am I gonna have to look external to that? Then the expected ROI. Once again, remember, ROI isn't always immediate cost savings. It could be about avoiding future costs, like hiring additional headcount, thanks to the improved efficiency. And then after that, I like to look at the time to implement. Because that's really important to consider, right? And especially when you're starting to kick off a new program and really thinking about automations, you want to make sure that you do choose some quick wins that can very much immediately show that impact in that ROI. And then the last piece, of course, is just how do these, goals all align back to the business goals that you identified, the criteria align back to the business goals that you had identified earlier in the process. You also, once again, you can consider risk mitigation. Sometimes that's really key for certain industries, so that's kind of higher rated. Usually when I'm thinking about that, that's not one of my top things that I'm concerned about. I am concerned about it. It's just not weighted as heavily as the others. And so when you use this kind of structured approach, you can ensure that your automation efforts are aligned with your business goals and deliver real and measurable results.
Fantastic. That's really insightful. Thank you very much, Thomas. I love the structured approach you have to that framework, and I think that really will help people think through this part of the evaluation. So the process, really begins with evaluating the unique fintech needs of your business. There's often common manual financial processes and pain points, many of which Rich and Thomas help us identify. But it's important to do this internal diagnosis upfront so you can ensure you're optimizing for your business. So appreciate your insights there. So we've identified and defined what a fintech stack is and what some of the benefits are. We know how we can approach evaluating our own fintech needs by identifying our own manual processes today, pinpointing some of those areas for improvement, and then prioritizing based on our business goals in the framework that Rich and Thomas spoke to. So now let's dig in a bit deeper into some of those key financial operation components. So here are the essential processes for a financial operation platform. And critically, automation can be leveraged to streamline all these processes. So let's start with the ERP, or Enterprise Resource Planning System. So like accounting software, an ERP system can help you track financial transactions and provide reporting, but it can also be good to go beyond these functions, and it can help you with integrating with inventory and production and things like this. So, Rich, I'd love to start with you here again. Since Baker Tilly works with ERPs, can you talk about how an ERP system can really serve as a powerful tool that can really enhance the efficiency and the effectiveness of a fintech stack, as well as perhaps the type or size of company that may benefit most from having an ERP?
No problem. So I actually have worked with some folks recently where we just rolled off of an implementation where their fintech stack was fully loaded. And that allowed, going back to the automation piece of everything, that allowed for clear, clean, on-time automation of everything, where really the value added with with Sage Intacct specifically, was to allow them to just sync all these different third-party systems that they were using directly into Intacct, to where Intacct is now just their specific accounting product at that point. We're not necessarily using a bunch of the modules within it, but what that does allow for is for very quick and timely reporting. So when it comes to that specifically, that's going to allow us to see budget to actuals very quickly. That's going to allow all the transactions to come through. I know Thomas just mentioned a couple different kind of options to go to as far as like headcount and some statistical data and things like that. One value added there specifically with statistical data going into Intacct is going to be some things like headcount or just direct employee expenses, because when you're importing, for example, or you sync data over that's going to be direct to an employee, you would be able to even budget and see a budget to actual on an employee by employee basis. So you would be able to bring in all that data specifically, pull up one employee and see all of their data. So that's an example there. You could do the same thing with different sort of CIP or any sort of internal projects that you're bringing in. You can track the project status very easily, depending on the basis that you're running that project for. Again, let's assume it is a capitalized project. You'd be able to see, what phase it's in, how much have we capitalized, how much is left to capitalize. You're just going to be able to get all that data, live. It's all going to be ready for you right away. There's no loading of anything. All the data is considered live. If I enter a transaction right now, it's all going to show up right away for us. And that is really the beauty of like any sort of ERP system, especially one that's going to be able to integrate with different third parties to be able to report on that most effectively and get real-time data.
I love that. Thank you, Rich. It sounds like an ERP can really help with kind of consolidation of some of this critical business data, which can help, as you mentioned, with tracking and reporting. And with all this data being live, it can provide really a living source of truth to make those kind of optimized business decisions. So that makes a lot of sense and really helpful insight there. On to the next ones. We know that accounts payable and accounts receivable are essential to a finance department. So an AP system can track invoices, can automate approvals and streamline payments, while AR can automate invoicing and collection, and it can help manage cash flow. And both can really drive efficiencies and minimize human error. So Thomas, turning to you on this, as a company that specializes in integrations, how does Celigo help its clients integrate with various fintech platforms to streamline those AP and AR processes?
Yep. So, Celigo in general, right? We can connect any two what we call endpoints, right? So any two systems can be connected, but there are some systems where there's pre-built connectors that can make it much easier, essentially out of the box, so you don't have as much of a long implementation timeline. But really, when I think about accounts receivables and accounts payable, integrations often, the secret to integration often is, the secret to efficiency is often, unlocking that integration, because a lot of the businesses and the systems we use kind of end up being a little bit siloed, right? So for example, in your CRM, you're going to hold all your quote data. Then while your ERP, on the other hand, is going to have your invoices and your payments. And so trying to connect those two systems to make sure that you have all of that, up to date in real time without having someone manually having to transfer the data between them. So, like if your customer data is updated in your CRM, right, then Celigo is going to make sure that in real time, more or less immediately, it's going to get updated into your ERP as well. Or when a contract's signed, that opportunity is going to seek directly to your ERP, and it's going to allow you to, invoice within minutes, right? I mean, it depends on the timing that you set up these flows, of course. But rather than, I've worked at companies before we had those systems integrated where you had a team that was just downloading all of the opportunity information, manually making a spreadsheet, and then importing it into your ERP in order to get your invoices out there. And obviously that's manual, that's error prone. And so you can get rid of that completely by having the proper integration set up. Another space in AR that we have a great solution, in my opinion, is cash application. We have the cash application manager, which we call CAM. So then that goes directly from your bank account to your ERP. It ingests all the payment data coming from your bank account. It reads all the fields there, because usually there's invoice numbers or maybe customer data there that it can use to identify what invoice it's going to apply it to. Automatically applies to invoices, and then has a nice dashboard that someone like myself or a manager can go in and you can see real time what's your your match rate, right? Like how much is going through, how much is airing out, and then you can reteach the system on the ones that are not getting matched, so that then next time they come through, it has the right data in order to enable that automated matching. And then on the AP side, it's kind of the same story, right? Where you're trying to, integrate your vendor and your invoice, kind of your AP system and your payments directly to your ERP. And so, one really common use case that I always love to integrate is connecting your HR system, pretty much to all of your systems, but especially to your AP or your procurement system. Because obviously, most of the time, you're going to want your approvals in those platforms to be set up on the manager hierarchy. And it gets really, really messy when you're trying to manually update that in a system over and over, even if it has like a nice Excel import. If you're not doing it real time, things get errored out, they get stuck with managers, they go to the wrong people, and it makes a really bad customer experience as an internal customer, right, for your own employees. So you want to be really careful about those. And so these integrations, eliminate efficiencies, reduce errors, and ultimately, they make your AR and AP processes just faster and smarter.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. It sounds like, a big part of the secret sauce is getting those integrations set up. Like you mentioned, Cash Application Manager on the AR side, connecting HR to AP and procurement on the AP side. So really good insights there. Just kind of as a follow-on to that, Thomas, can Celigo help fintech companies manage global AR and AP operations? So things like currency conversion or tax compliance, international payment processing. Can Celigo help with those?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, Celigo is designed to handle, the complexity of global operations. For currency conversion, for example, our ERP can pull exchange rates through a direct integration. You can use Celigo for that integration if that's the problem that you're trying to solve, to make sure that you have, real-time FX rates, depending on, whether you want them, blended averages, daily, end of month for your balance sheet rates. So you can definitely use Celigo for that. I mean, for tax compliance, that one's really interesting to me, because I didn't really see how we would be able to really be used for tax compliance. And then we don't have a great tax solution internally at Celigo. And it's one of the areas that I kind of flagged as high risk, right? And I think that a lot of that tax compliance really starts with the accuracy of your data once again. And so then we set up a lot of automations with Celigo to make sure, once again, that we're syncing all of that customer data, that it's staying, correct in real time, that we have automations through Celigo that then flag when certain data is missing, like if you're missing, certain zip codes, or if a zip code and a state just don't match, it can flag that kind of stuff for you as well. We set up an automation to flag when we would need tax exempt certificates, a little bit at the mercy of sales entering the right data there, but then also going and collecting those tax, automations to go collect those tax exemption certificates so that we always have them on file. And probably my favorite one is we set up a lot of integrations that go to our data warehouse and then to our visualization or data analytics tool, to where we made a big compliance dashboard that I can look at, and I can really see real time where there might be risks as far as taxes considered. And one of the big highlights there is tracking Nexus, right? And seeing like, hey, when we might be hitting Nexus in different countries, in different states. Well, Nexus is really a state thing, but we tax requirements in different areas. And so I think that one's really important. And for international payments, that was actually a pain point for us. We have a pretty large India branch. And if anyone's ever tried to create integrations using India bank accounts in INR, it can be pretty difficult. And so we use Celigo to set up some automations that allowed us to, pull all of the payment information that we needed out of one system, transform it into a flat file that is what our bank needs in order to build the payment batch. So that way our AP manager can now just look at this pre-built from the system where all the approvals are happening, make sure the data is accurate. I always want to have that checkpoint in there. And then they can just upload it directly to our bank portal of our choice, and they can just automate all the payments in that way. So not 100% automated, but a lot better than our accountant have to go in there and manually key in every single payment data and all the errors that can come along with that. So, I mean, really, with me, the possibilities are endless. And I'm always amazed when I get on customer calls to see some of the things that they've thought of and see some of the key integrations that they're making. No idea why my camera keeps going off, but see some of the integrations that they're making, and it's really exciting. And I actually have a special dashboard that's based off our product telemetry that anytime I'm going to connect the system, I look at my customers and say like, hey, who else has connected this, and what do those connections look like? And it always gives me really great ideas of things that like I never would have thought of.
I love that. Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, it sounds like Celigo offers a lot of different capabilities that can manage a lot of those complexities and nuances that come along with global AP&A operations. So really interesting insights there. I'll move on to the next one. So spend and expense management. It's another key component of financial operations. So this part of the stack really helps track and control spending. It can help record, approve, and reimburse employee expenses, and it integrates corporate credit cards with budget management tools. So Rich, I'll turn to you on this. What are some of the common challenges that your clients face with spend and expense management? And how do you help to address these issues?
So the common challenges typically are how do we kind of corral and direct on an employee by employee basis how much they can spend? So really just kind of giving control to the employees themselves to be able to control that. And that can be controlled multiple different ways. So the first question we would ask is, okay, what are you doing today, right? And if the answer is nothing, then we go in couple different directions. If the answer is we're currently using this system here and it's doing X, Y, and Z, then let's do some comparing and contrasting, right? How is what's some potential substitute systems? How can, again, from the system that I work with directly, Sage Intacct, how can this system really manage that for you a lot better? So it really is real situational. It's very circumstantial there in the sense that it's a client by client basis. So if they're already currently if they're not using a system, then maybe we suggest using a third party, one of our marketplace partners, and say, hey, they do this, X, Y, and Z. This is going to be able to, this is going to allow you to really kind of govern how they spend, on a purchase by purchase basis. And we can go that route and talk about, what that third party sync is going to look like, how seamless it is, how that looks in Intacct. We can go in that direction. If it's a situation where they say, hey, we're not really using anything feasibly, we're not trying to use a third party, what can your program provide us directly with Sage Intacct, for example? Then we would go the route of, we can integrate directly, which is a Sage product, is just spend management. So then spend management directly essentially injects into the budget. So you're going to have a budget and you can budget, 10 different ways, right? Using different dimensions. Are we doing departmental budgets, project budgets, location budgets? The list goes on. And then we could actually establish it based on a month by month budgetary basis and say the employees will enter their own expenses through what we would call purchasing within Sage Intacct. And then if that amount ever exceeds the budget, then we would have the option of either notifying the person in charge of the budget or their manager, if you will, or just erroring out altogether, right? So that's really going to put the clamps down on you can't spend more than what you have, right? You have a budget allocated directly to you, and we will, you can't essentially outspend that. So those are some native. There's a native way there, and then there's also the third party direction as well.
Fantastic. That makes sense. Yeah, thank you, Rich. And it sounds like it's all about kind of evaluating on that case-by-case basis to determine the best way to approach that. So that makes sense and appreciate that insight. Next up is payroll. So a payroll system helps manage wages, bonuses, taxes, and benefits. And so, Thomas, I'll pass back to you here. How does Celigo work with various payroll software providers to automate some of those payroll-related tasks? Things like generating reports, analyzing payroll data, and managing employee benefits.
Yeah, so I think for payroll, right, the key focus of automation that usually comes to mind for me is the employee data, right? Somewhere, you have your HR system, most likely. Hopefully, you have a system out there for that. But you have your HR system. It has all your employee data. It usually has all your pay information, but it's usually not directly connected to your ERP or to your payroll provider, whoever you're using to process your payroll. And so there is that gap. And so you get in this place of like, well, who really owns that HR data? Who makes sure it's updated? Who makes sure it's communicated to payroll? Who makes sure it gets in the payroll system, right? And who makes sure that happens by the cutoff for payroll, or else people get paid wrong, right? And obviously, no one wants to pay anyone wrong. That's the rule number one of payroll. So with Celigo, being an integration company, that's been our focus: is how do we get all that aligned? And so we have a couple different routes for payroll. Mainly we have a big U.S. payroll processor, and so we did exactly that. We connected our HRIS system directly to the payroll processor, so all of the updates from the employee census perspective are automatically in there. As soon as raises go in, they're automatically in there. So the only manual gap that's still left is variable pay. That does come up, and we're working right now on some solutions to get that automated as well. Then the other part that we've done is build once again, you'll hear me talk about data ingestion and data warehouses a lot, because I think that's where a lot of the companies are going, right? To where we also have a data warehouse where we're ingesting all of that same information that then allows us to build customized visualization boards that we can track things and make sure that we can review payroll quicker, drill down into information quicker, and just make it that much sure that it is 100% accurate. Because once again, when we're talking about people's pay, it has to be 100% accurate. And then even in other systems, because as long as the other system has, an open API, we can connect to it. And so we've used Celigo in many ways to then go and connect to, our international payroll providers, and make sure that they get everything on time. If anyone's ever had outsourced international payroll, the cutoffs are very aggressive. And so it's even more important that you have that data ready, on hand and getting there, because you miss those pay dates, you have a lot of extra fees. Maybe your employees don't get paid. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong there. So making sure that you can get that data between your systems is definitely key. And that's exactly what Celigo can help do.
Fantastic. Thank you, Thomas. Cool. And for the last one, so FP&A, crucial for any company's financial tech stack. It provides data-driven insights, and that can help inform strategic decisions, improve operational efficiencies, mitigate risk, and ensure regulatory compliance. So ultimately, FP&A can really help drive growth and profitability. So Rich, Baker Tilly offers FP&A services, and I'd love to know, how do you help clients streamline their FP&A processes and improve efficiency? And maybe can you share any examples of successful FP&A projects that you've completed for clients?
Sure. So Baker Tilly as a whole does offer the FP&A solutions there, whether that's through Oracle financial planning, any sort of public sector or private equity, or just outsourced accounting. All of those are available, right? So again, as far as the umbrella of financial services provided by Baker Tilly as a whole, you're going to be able to find all of those here. Absolutely. In terms of my direct kind of view, if you will, of everything involving FP&A, again, that's going to go back to the software that I'm familiar with as far as how I'm going to use this as far as an FP&A tool on a daily basis. And going back to Sage Intacct with that, that's really going to be specifically what we were going to call like dashboards. So we want you to be able to essentially be able to analyze and visualize everything on a really a need to know, but on a constant basis. So in terms of being able to have the financial planning and everything there. So we already went over kind of the spend management and the budgetary on like a budgetary basis, and even having the budget accessibility and kind of putting the governor on that. You can see that in real time as well by using, again, what we would call a dashboard. So what that is going to be putting any sort of graphs, any tools. I know Thomas talked about like the KPIs and different things there. All of that can be on a dashboard within the Sage Intacct. That's going to allow you to be able to view all the graphs, see where we're at, see where we're heading, look at a forecast, look at the budget, look at a year-to-year analysis, any sort of analysis that you could help that's going to assist you in the financial planning for the next period or the next year, anything that's going to help you there, again, visually, or just the raw data itself, side-by-side comparisons. All of that can be a one-stop shop, just sitting there on the dashboard. You can log into the system. It's the first thing you see every single day. And that way, it's really just going to allow you to keep in touch with the pulse of all the financial data that's coming through, see where we're going. Are we going in the right direction? Are we not? How can we course correct? You're going to be able to do that very quickly and also plan for the future that way. Just again on a daily basis, you're not gonna miss anything. You're not going to be shocked by something that comes through next week, because you would literally see that every single day, and that's going to really just help you plan for the future there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rich. So we've seen that a fintech stack has several critical components, and Rich and Thomas really helped us understand them in greater detail. So though there's a variety of considerations and challenges in managing these, we've seen a couple ways that each process can be automated and turned into a really strategic lever for your business.
Perfect. The discussion so far has been amazing. You guys are doing fantastic. I'm loving everything that we're hearing. I'm going to go ahead and open our next poll question. Which areas of your financial operations are you looking to streamline? You can select all that apply. Are you trying to streamline your accounts payable, accounts receivable, spend and expense management, financial planning and analysis, EP, payroll, other? If you said other, let us know in the Q&A what it is that you're looking to streamline, or maybe none. Maybe you're feeling really satisfied with where your tech stack is now. But yeah, let us know what you are looking to streamline. I'm going to keep this open on your screen for the next 5 or 10 seconds, and then we'll go ahead and just leave it open in the poll tab so that we can continue through our discussion today.
All right, thank you, Megan. So we know the key ingredients of a fintech stack. So now we just need to know the steps in the recipe, if you will, for optimizing your financial operations. So here we'll talk about those steps to building an integrated finance stack. So that first step is really determining your business needs. And we've already really kind of discussed this earlier during our conversation around evaluating the current fintech needs of your business. So now that we've identified what's needed, it's time to start shopping for tools. So step 2 really is to start to shop smart and consider factors like integration, UX, pricing, security, automation, and scalability. And so Thomas, as our resident integration expert, what factors should businesses consider when evaluating the integration capabilities of different fintech solutions?
Yeah, I think the very first place to start, right, is making sure that you understand what is currently in your tech stack, what the plans for those different products might be, and maybe how those are already connected and what other connections you might have at your disposal, right? That really helps you set the foundation for this bigger picture when you're starting to evaluate new options. And so when you look at the new vendors, one of the first things I always check for is just compatibility, right? Do they have native integrations with the current tech stack, or maybe other items that we're planning on adding to the tech stack? If they don't, do they have the other ways to connect, for example, like open APIs or integration protocols, right? So I think that'll make sure it can work seamlessly with your other systems, or at least give you the ability to, in a way, to integrate them. I mean, without that compatibility, right, it might not be a good fit to add into your tech stack. Next is just to consider the complexity of the implementation, right? Like, how quickly will the solution be up and running? Make sure that you set those expectations and understand whether, hey, this is a small implementation, I have talent in-house that I can complete this with, versus I'm going to have external consultants. There's going to be an additional cost. It's going to be a big lag. And then if you're bringing in the external consultants, like, how are we going to do the handover from the implementation they built to having someone hopefully in-house, be able to own this going forward? And then also just the scalability and flexibility, right? I mean, they're just very crucial to consider. I always want to look at solutions that probably are a little bit too overpowered for me, and hopefully I don't have to pay too much for that overpower, right? They come in different packages and ways that you can kind of scale up to it, but I want something that I can grow into, something that when I look down my own roadmap, 3 to 5 years where I see my company going, are they still going to be able to support me? Are we going to grow with that company? Are they going to be a very good partner for us? And you just cannot overlook security and compliance. I mean, especially in data sensitive industries, you just have to make sure that, this vendor is meeting all the regulatory requirements. They have your normal SOC tests available. They can answer your security and compliance questions. You just don't want to overlook that, because if you have a security and compliance team, you can't, because they're going to be all over it. But if you don't, you want to make sure that that's something that you consider. And really just preparation is everything, because if you've clearly defined all your business goals, and then you can create a standardized evaluation criteria, and that's just key, right? So that when you're going into demos and you're seeing what they're offering, that everyone, and you should always have a cross-functional team in these meetings, all the key stakeholders or all these demos, that everyone is evaluating this on the same criteria. So when you meet back to discuss about, hey, this is what we saw, you're all speaking the same language and you're all looking for the same things. And yeah, you might add things as you see different demos, but at least you have this core set of the questions you're going to ask so that everyone's kind of treating them the same.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Thomas. I think you've given us a really great framework to have some criteria and evaluation, considering things like cost and functionality, and not forgetting to avoid or to look at things like security and compliance as well. So appreciate your insights on that. So moving on to the next one, we've done some shopping and we've considered some of those key variables in our search that Thomas pointed out. So now step 3 is to build your shortlist and identify, at least 3 companies where you can get hands-on experience with demos and trials. And so you can start to compare features to see which ones work best for you. So I want to ask our panelists if they have any advice for, when taking a demo, what questions that you can ask that'll really help, your company determine if the technology is right for you. So Rich, I'll start with you here. What questions do you think can be particularly helpful for businesses to ask to really figure out if the technology is right for their business?
I think Thomas kind of nailed this one with his last response there, talking about scalability, specifically, what is the cost, start at the top and then kind of work your way down, really kind of calibrate what your needs are specifically. And it's all about, again, addressing those pain points. What systems are you using? What systems do you need? What are your needs? Are your needs being met? And then we really go from there. And then we start looking at, going back to your question about the demos, and we start looking at, okay, which marketplace partner, which integration potentially would be perfect for you, and then what maybe are some more native offerings that you're already paying for that you might just not fully understand yet. So in my case, with Sage Intacct, I'm very fortunate in that it's kind of a one size fits all. There's a lot of different options and modules available just right out the gate that we can fully customize and configure to your specific needs. Now, outside of that, then we can start talking about, hey, we're really wanting to do this. We're trying to target in on this. We're trying to be more efficient over here. Can we do that? And maybe that's the opportunity where we say, hey, look, I know these guys over here do a fantastic job at that. I think it's worth having those discussions. Fortunately, the more of those discussions I have with clients, the more not only knowledgeable I become, but the better relationship I generate with who that third party might be. And then I have a direct contact with those folks as well. So that's going to allow me to either save time and be able to kind of give you a real good rundown on what this is going to look like for you specifically with your needs, or at the very least, I would be able to get you in contact with the person relatively quickly, and then you can start going through the process with them right away. So you definitely want to be able to have the return on your investment there as well. So again, as Thomas said, you want to be able to say, hey, this is the perfect product for me, but I only need this much of it. Again, going back to just really calibrating what your needs are specifically and how they can be met.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Rich nailed it, right? And the key, your business needs, meet with all the cross-functional stakeholders, define those business needs, agree on them, and from there, that really should drive the questions that you're asking, and everyone should agree on what those questions are. And it's really nice to make sure you have that core set of questions, prepared beforehand, so that every single vendor you're evaluating, you're asking those same questions, so you're kind of judging them on the same criteria. And Rich nailed it as well, right? I mean, ROI, and then the extension of that, total cost of ownership is very, very key to understand. That should always be one of the questions that's kind of asked or assessed. And usually, most vendors, the sales team has a version of that they kind of have prepared, right? There's something that they can give you. As a controller, I poke a lot of holes in those. It's part of the fun part of the process, but it is a good starting point. So don't think, hey, I need to go back and build that all myself. You should ask that question and see what they have, right? And see what their future roadmap looks like as well. And that's the kind of the scalability and growing with them question.
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. Thank you both. I realize we've got less than 10 minutes, so I'll try to keep us moving along at a brisk pace, but I'm loving the conversation and the insights. Step 5 next is implementation. And so Rich, on this one, maybe what are a few of the key steps involved in successfully implementing a fintech stack, and maybe ways that businesses can think about minimizing disruption during that process?
So we will whenever we start, and again, going back to the product that I'm servicing, when we start an implementation, we're talking about design. I'm already having those conversations about, again, how do we meet your needs? What are your KPIs? What are your pain points? What do we need there? So as far as the steps involved there, I always try to kind of really get it going in the front end of the implementation. So I want to know how I can best serve you essentially, and I want to get you in contact with the right people. And let's just get the ball rolling now, because what we don't want to happen, and you're talking about minimizing disruption to their operations during the process, what we don't want to happen is we have a great solution over here, but then we wait too long. And now you've gone through a full implementation, which takes all of, if not more than all your bandwidth, right? I mean, there's no capacity left there. What we don't want to do though is try to do something after the fact as well. I understand stacking, literally stacking a fintech stack on a fintech stack here is a lot. And again, talking about bandwidth, but what we don't want to do is disrupt it for longer by doing one implementation, then stacking another one on the other side of it. So I like to have those conversations right away and get the ball rolling. That way, it truly does minimize disrupting their operations, and we can just get it all done in one fell swoop.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, right? Yeah, exactly that. The hypercare that comes with any big implementation project, you just have to make sure you're considering that. You don't want to like go live and then be like, all right, it's done. Like you need to take the time to listen to the feedback that happens, to see what happens right after, and to have the team ready to act on that. I mean, that should always be worked into any, project cycle.
Absolutely. All right, perfect. And finally, the job isn't quite done with implementation. The final step really is one that's ongoing, and that's to regularly reevaluate and update your stack. And so, Thomas, maybe to you, how often would you say a business should reevaluate their fintech stack, and maybe what metrics can they use to kind of measure the performance of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is really continuously. And I think, the big metrics, once again, when you started the project, you should have set clear KPIs. Is it meeting those KPIs? And then as business changes, should those KPIs change? And then as those KPIs change, does the technology still meet that, right? Because I mean, all businesses are evolving, but I'm very, very big on having KPIs, having them visualized and having them available for tracking of all my different projects, teams, and processes. And the other side of it is, listen to feedback, right? Especially, it might not be truly updating as in rip and replace, but there's always things you can tweak within your tech stack to make it more efficient, to make it better for employees. So you have to make sure you have some avenue where employees know who they can go to, know who they can talk to. Sometimes some of the best ideas for enhancements within the tech stack just comes from a random email that someone sends me almost as a complaint about something. And it's like, wait a second, that's very true. And we can solve this. And there's probably a lot of people that need this. And you do your research and there are. And then you can just always kind of continually be improving it and continually making it better. I mean, I think every implementation I do always has 2 to 3 phases, which phase 3 is like not even defined. But we know like, okay, there's different things that we're going to tweak between the launch and between what we see as the end state. So it's just really just continuously monitoring the progress.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. Thank you, Thomas. All right, next slide, please.
Let's see, what factor do you consider most important when selecting fintech tools for your business? I'm going to keep this open on the screen for about 20 seconds for those of you who are on mobile and need to answer on screen, and then it will transition back to the poll tab for anybody else who still needs to get their answer in. But we want to know what, after hearing all of this advice, what do you consider most important when considering fintech tools for your business? So you've got about 5 more seconds to just click your option on the screen, or if you don't have time to do that, hit the poll tab and you can answer there. And we will jump back in to the slides for our last couple of minutes here.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Megan. Cool. So once you've chosen your fintech tools, it's time to actually start leveraging them at your company. But we all know change is never easy. There may be hurdles that you need to overcome to really drive that adoption and usage, so you can really unlock the full potential of your finance operation tools. So here you can see some of the common challenges of implementing new technology. This spans employee resistance, inadequate training, integrating with existing systems, cost, security, and data privacy concerns. Rather than go through each one of them, I want to make sure that we have enough time. So I will pose to both of you, Rich and Thomas, looking at kind of some of these common change management issues, do you have one that you've seen the most, frequently, or just kind of any general piece of advice in kind of mitigating some of the difficulties of change management? Rich, maybe I'll start with you on this.
Sure. Yeah, employee resistance is usually related to training, right? Because everybody wants to be comfortable. You're comfortable over here. Nobody likes change. We're moving from a system we've used forever. Now we're in this new system, and now we're doing 3 other things. It's overwhelming. And so really just kind of driving home what the finish line is going to look like, how much better it's going to be, how much more efficient and effective things are going to be, giving that true demo of, in my case, what the reports are going to look like and how much easier everything is going to be. That's the biggest, selling point. That's really how I've found is the best way to get people on board. And then also, whenever I go through and I'm doing trainings for the implementation itself on the software, I'm recording everything. I'm giving you the recordings. You're going to have it forever, right? For as long as you want, you're going to be able to look back on those recordings. And then fortunately, there's also going to be areas where there's going to be other learning modules and things like that are going to be available to you. That's always going to be there as well. And you're going to have that, for your employees and everyone else to be able to look back on as well.
Yeah, I love that answer. Recordings, man. Recordings are your friend. Anytime you're going to give training or enablement, record. And the other piece I'll say there is, hopefully everyone goes through a pretty strong UAT cycle, right? User acceptance testing. That's also an excellent time to start putting together that documentation that you're going to need for your employees. A lot of times, and that's something I should have discussed when you're choosing a vendor, is you should also ask if they have that readily available. A lot of vendors have a lot of that enablement stuff just out of the can ready for you. But while you're going through UAT, you're going to see most of the FAQs, everything should pop up during those tests. And so make sure you document that and just work that into your UAT cycle. The one that always stands out to me, controller, right? Cost constraints. Obviously, that was a big one on the poll as well. I just say, once again, return on investment, make sure you understand it and how to calculate it, and total cost of ownership. The other one is any big major project, major system really needs a champion at the executive level who understands it and understands why. And if you have that person at your back and you have your KPIs set and you are tracking and delivering and hopefully even exceeding the KPIs that you thought were possible, the cost constraints should not be as much of an issue.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. On to the next slide, please.
We've actually got to wrap up our session, but thank you everybody for being here today, and we appreciate your time.